Getting older can sometimes suck, and getting older in the age of social media definitely sucks. If you're tired of people telling you to age gracefully, then you're in the right place. This is all about living your best life at any age. First rule, don't call me ma'am. Hey everyone, I'm Jodi Miller, and this is Don't Call Me Ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. And this next guest better not call me ma'am, because to him, I definitely am a ma'am. But for those of you who know me, he could easily be my boyfriend, right? But no, this episode isn't about being a cougar. I did wear my ripped jeans because I'm trying to seem young. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm very excited to have this next guest. I work very closely with him. He is a producer, he is a director, he is a Gen Zer, and he is a survivor of pediatric cancer. We're going to get into it. Now that I'm a mom, it's definitely something that I think I really wanted to address because it's something that is every parent's worst nightmare. Start clapping right now, and by that I mean pull your car over to the side of the road if you're driving, because we have to be safe, for Aaron. Yay! Thank you. Do you like my ripped jeans?
Yeah, I love your ripped
They're
jeans.
very Gen Z.
Yeah, I would say maybe millennial, Gen Z,
I'll take a young millennial. I'll take
millennial,
that.
yeah.
All right, so let's dive into it. Tell me everything about your background as far as being, someone that was diagnosed with cancer at such a young age.
Yeah, so I had a pretty normal upbringing. I grew up in Los Angeles.
Right.
I went to school here for middle school, elementary school, and high school.
Right.
And my mom's a teacher taught at my elementary school.
Right.
That'll come in.
Oh, I was going to say, though,
later.
we have to talk about that because who
Yeah.
doesn't want their mom at school with them?
Oh yeah, it was a little bit annoying at times, but whenever I went to the principal's office, she'd always stare me down every time.
Yeah. Oh my God, so much trouble. Meanwhile, though, if your parents were accountants, they're not working in your school, they don't even know sometimes you get sent to the principal's office. They're like, "How was your day?" They're like, "Great."
Yeah, they would never know unless my mom was just out there and staring at me all the way to the principal's office. And the principal was her good friend, so she would tell her everything I did wrong.
And it was a lot, guys.
There was a lot of things. But the things I did wrong, partially, was not my fault. And that comes back to my cancer.
What type of things?
So I had Ependymoma, which is brain cancer. It was encapsulated in a tumor, but I don't want to spoil anything yet for the later of the story. Yes. So I'll start from the beginning. Yeah. So I was born in 2000, and I was nonverbal until I was 4 years old. Wow. My parents thought I just had special needs, and I went to a special needs preschool.
You said no words at all. The reason I'm even bringing it up, too, is because my daughter is starting to go to a speech therapist. Mm-hmm. But so you said nothing at all. You couldn't say no, you couldn't say mama, you couldn't say dada, nothing.
Nothing. And I would act out because of that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Did you do any of the, and I know this obviously because these are the milestones, did you do the ba, 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 like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say utterances like that, and I would try to speak, but I couldn't. There was something in my head that was preventing me from speaking, and they saw that I really wanted to,
right? And
then I couldn't, so it made me angry, and I would lash out in different ways. I bit children. I
bite children, though.
Yeah, who doesn't?
I mean, come on, that's fun sometimes.
And I would break windows. I would swing on the chandelier. I would do so many things where my parents were like, "Geez, he's just crazy. He's just a crazy child, and we need to figure out something because he's just gonna harm himself in the long run." So they put me in a special preschool with other kids that were acting out and.
That sounds like a lot of fun for the teacher.
Oh, yeah. We had 3 or 4 teachers at a time in the classroom, and it wasn't a big class.
Right.
Yeah, so I would get on the short bus, as everyone calls it, and they picked me up from home. And then flash forward to elementary school. I spoke at 4 years old, and that was it. But I had speech impediments. There was still something lingering in my brain that wouldn't allow me to speak properly.
Okay.
And I still have to work it out, and that's part of everything.
Did you go to speech therapists? I'm assuming that you did.
I did.
Did they think that there was any indication that there was something more medically?
Not really, because a lot of kids at that time had speech impediments,
Right.
and like I knew a couple of kids who couldn't pronounce some words right, and
Right.
I was like that. Also, my parents are bilingual and wanted to teach me Spanish at a young
Right.
age, so they thought that was confusing me.
Right.
And they stopped speaking Spanish. They only spoke Spanish to my brother. So I first started to learn Spanish and then went to English and then just English. And then in elementary school, I also had ADHD. So I'd be all over the place. And my parents thought it's a mix of ADHD and other things that
Right.
were preventing me from learning properly. Turns out on the first day of third grade, we went to the mall to celebrate us getting into a new grade.
Right.
I had a seizure in the mall
Oh my God.
in my right eye. So we knew something was wrong in the left side of my brain, but not at the time. My mom's friend, luckily she's a hospice nurse that was with us, said, there's something really wrong with your child. Like this shouldn't be happening to a normal 8-year-old.
Right.
No pre-existing conditions,
Right.
nothing. And so we called the ambulance, and thank God they called the ambulance because I had a full body seizure in the ambulance, and they treated me on the ambulance. When I got to the hospital, then this all happened in like an hour, and I don't remember any of it.
You
This
don't
is
remember any
all
of it.
me retelling it through somebody who told me.
Right.
They did a CAT scan. They looked at my brain, and they saw a big mass, like a golf ball sized mass on the left side of my brain. And they're like, it could be cancer, it could be benign, we don't know. It's enclosed, we know it's a tumor. But we really need to get him treated as soon as possible.
Now, just for those of you who don't know, the left side of the brain controls speech. Mm-hmm. What else does it control?
Memory.
Okay.
Yeah, cognitive learning abilities. It really affects a lot. And at that age, you're learning so much.
Yes.
You're learning cursive, multiplications, especially in third grade. You're learning a lot of those social
Were you struggling
abilities.
in school at the time?
I always struggled in school.
Okay.
And it was part of that.
Okay.
And they assume the speech, the learning disabilities, ADHD is part of, it's not part of that, but it's
Right.
separate. But all of that combined, I couldn't learn anything. Like it was just so hard for me to learn things and learn adding. It just took me a long time. And so after I got the CAT scan, they said, okay, we need to send you to an actual children's hospital
Okay.
to get you really checked out. So they sent me to UCLA Reagan Children's Hospital, which is a great hospital, by the way. It served a lot of children, and the unit that I was in was pretty brand new at the time. Mm-hmm. So they treated me very, very nicely, and all the staff there was super friendly towards children, which makes it a lot easier for the kids to feel not like you're in a dire situation.
Super scary.
Yeah.
Even if you were just going in there for something that isn't a dire situation, if you're going in there for a broken arm or whatever, a stomach issue, it's scary for a child. I was in a hospital when I was a child for a bladder infection. My parents said that I was losing my mind. It's scary. Scary to go to the doctor. Could you imagine going to a hospital? Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying, and my parents had no idea what was going on. Their 8-year-old, their youngest, had a seizure and wound up in a hospital a day later. They're going crazy. I have no idea what's going on. I had no processing over what was going on.
Right, of course.
And so they did a scan and they said, yeah, it is a tumor. We have to remove it because it's growing at an exponential rate. And my surgery was, I think, 2 weeks after they first found it.
So before we get to the removal, was that always there from
Since I tried to speak.
So
Yeah.
18 months.
Yeah.
Around 18 months is so you'd been living with
It's been
that.
developing in my brain
Wow.
since I was 18 months.
And your parents would have never thought to, unless you had had a seizure younger, they would have never thought. They just kept thinking it was a learning disability, a speech impediment, all of the things that, parents
Which
like, yeah.
happens
Of
to
course.
children. Not all people who have seizures or learning
course.
disabilities have a tumor.
I don't want people running out right now getting,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, CAT scans, like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, but it's scary. Like for parents who have a young child, and
course.
you have a young child, it's something that you never wish upon your child. And we've known people that had these things happen before.
So 2 weeks after they say, all right, you get the surgery.
Yeah, so 2 weeks after I got the notification that I needed surgery, I remember my mother and my aunts took me out to Chuck E. Cheese because at the time I thought it was just a fun day, and I was like, it could be my last day. That's what they
This is
thought.
going to be your last day. We're going to take you to Chuck E. Cheese. Like now,
Yeah.
I'm sure for a kid that's great, but like think about that. Like that's your last day wish is like Chuck E. Cheese.
Seems
in that
pretty good
moment.
to me.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I'm like, all right.
Maybe a couple whiskey shots and
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
our needs changed a little. All right.
Yeah, and so they just wanted me to have a good time. I
course.
couldn't go far from the hospital
Right.
because I still have a tumor inside my brain. So they took me out, and my dad was working full time. He couldn't stop working. My mom was taking time off from the first 2 weeks of school just to help me out. And my brother, I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me, and he had no idea what to do, what was going on.
Can't even imagine how he processed that.
Yeah, he felt helpless,
Yeah,
like
of
we all
course.
did.
That's his little brother, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think brothers take on that responsibility. I think all siblings do, but especially brothers have a bond where with their younger, like, I'm supposed to protect them. This is my job. And it's like nothing, no one.
Yeah.
The parents can't protect him. You
just
brother
have to
can't.
let
You just have to let it, yes.
happen and let the doctors take care of it, and hopefully modern medicine could figure it out.
Yeah.
Which miraculously it did. So we didn't know that it was cancerous until they took it out and did the autopsy. But once they took it out, all my brain chemistry changed. Like
did?
I
What?
couldn't even recognize myself in a mirror.
Are you serious?
Yeah. When I first got out of the surgery and I woke up, I'd use the restroom. I still think I had a catheter in, but I needed to go to the restroom and I wanted to walk. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I don't know who that is. It just didn't register to me
Oh my
that
God, that's
it was
so
me.
trippy.
Yeah. And it could have been the mix of me coming off the drugs.
He's on some good drugs.
Yeah, pretty good drugs. And it was just a mixture of all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is weird. It's really
Did you
trippy.
recognize your parents?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure because I have little to no memory of my
Right.
life before.
Right.
And I had to relearn a lot of things on the way. Like speech was easier because that ingrains in your brain, and long-term memory wasn't as affected.
Right.
But like at that point in your life, like you're forgetting and learning new things all
Yes.
the time.
Kids have a terrible short-term memory.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And mine was completely shot from the moment of that surgery.
Right.
And that started the point of relearning and trying new things with a defective brain, kind of a nice way to put it. But yeah, I had to go to therapy, that educational therapy, regular therapy,
Right.
because the psychological effects also took hold of
We're
me.
going to talk about that for
Yeah.
sure. But like, so it came out, they did the biopsy, they were like, this is cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As you're like healing from that, were they like, now we have to start chemotherapy, radiation, or so what happens after that?
So before the radiation, I had radiation. Thankfully, I didn't have chemo because.
Because you have great hair and
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to lose that as a kid.
Oh, exactly.
A
And
bald
when you
9-year-old is like,
when you
yeah.
have chemo as a child, it's like it totally destroys your whole system. You look at adults that get chemo, and they look like they're near death.
Yeah.
And I've seen children going through chemo, and a lot of those children, it's their last option,
Right,
is going
okay.
through chemo, like when you're going through lymphoma
Right.
or something. which is terrifying. And my parents were like, yeah, radiation, because thankfully I had another scan right after the surgery to make sure it didn't spread.
Right.
And I had a spinal tap, which for an 8-year-old having a spinal tap, like that needle is like 4 inches long, like going through your body as a
Everyone
8-year-old.
talks about how painful that is.
Yeah, and you can't really be sedated for it
No.
either. So they just jab you in the back with a giant needle.
Which, by the way, why can't you be sedated for that?
I think they numb the skin.
Right, they numb it's like a local, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
but why can't you just be passed out? You're not moving.
I have no idea. I have to
should
do
really
some
research
that.
that.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm upset now if they didn't.
Yeah,
they couldn't do
seriously.
that.
What if they were like, let's just not offer that?
That's one of the things I vividly remember
Yeah,
is the spinal
I'm
tap.
sure that imprinted on your brain.
Yeah. But yeah, so after I got the spinal tap and the last CT scan after the surgery, they said, okay, we're going to do a concentrated radiation on your brain. That means it's only going to attack that area around where the tumor was.
Yeah.
So if there's any existing cells that were not taken out, they'll die. So 6 weeks of radiation started in November 1st. So almost 16 years ago today, that I started radiation.
And he just ended today.
And I just ended today.
It's actually 16 years of radiation.
And my brain's completely fried.
It's fine. You're just not ever going to remember this podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy because I was only out for school for 2 weeks. So
That seems crazy.
Yeah.
Like you had brain surgery and radiation, but he's only out of school for 2 weeks. Which, I mean, I guess, look, kids rebound way faster than adults. You heal way faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They always say when it, like, they always say
our cells are just growing at an
they're just
accelerated rate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that sort of makes sense, but also it's like, wow.
Yeah. No, it was
So you
pretty
didn't
crazy.
really miss a year of school. I would assume that you'd be
No.
like, wow, you just came right back.
If it was metastasized,
Yes.
and if it was going through my body, I'd probably miss all of school.
Right.
But it was weird, like coming back.
Did kids know what you did? What happened?
Everyone knew. The Mrs. Like my mom's a teacher.
Right.
She was out. I was out. Everyone knew I had cancer, and it was a smaller school.
Right.
Like 500 kids. So everyone sent me cards.
Aw,
People
that's
came to the hospital when I was recovering, and the recovery process wasn't even that long.
Right.
Yeah, it was like a couple, like for physical recovery.
Right, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, every kid just saw me right after that as like the cancer kid. But
This is a great name.
yeah, which is
guys.
a great name. It is weird to be like that labeled kid and like that. It's just
terrible.
one moment you're a kid in school, and then 2 weeks later you're like
You're a cancer kid.
you're the cancer kid.
Like Marvel's not making a movie about that. There's no
Yeah.
cancer kid out there.
No superpowers
There should
for that,
be, though.
for
I
that
mean-
kid. Yeah,
I mean, you are a superhero. I mean, you literally had a brain tumor and then radiation, and here you are now. You know what I mean?
yeah, I literally did nothing with that. But the more of the psychological part, I would say that it helped me grow mature.
I was going to say you
Yeah.
probably grew up really fast.
Oh, yeah,
during
I
that
did.
time. So all right, so they obviously do everything the radiation, and then they give you the news that like you're cancer free. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, they did all these tests, and they're like, you're cancer free, like you're in remission, and that's it. After that, I had every 6 months MRI to check my brain, see if anything grew back. I still get checked every year for cancer.
This type of cancer does come back.
Yes, thankfully
Yours, yes.
it was encapsulated.
Right,
and
so-
it didn't do anything.
We know someone. We both know someone who. Well, I know the father who lost his son, and I know the daughter too, lost her brother, of the exact same cancer. Correct?
Yeah, it was very, very similar and at the same age.
At the same age,
Yeah.
I remember when that happened. I remember when they got the surgery to remove it, and at that time we're hopeful they got it all. That's what they were told. That They got it all, and that came back. Correct?
Yes,
The tumor
it
grew
came back and it grew back and
Faster, like, very
unfortunately
fast.
killed
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Unfortunately, he passed away.
Yeah.
Which is just it's unimaginable. I cannot even imagine. So
And it makes me feel like, oh, am I worth deserving like this life more than him? Like am I that worthy of life? And he was not. And yeah, like as an 8-year-old, I was having these conversations in my head, like why I was in the hospital with a bunch of kids who had cancer. I was going to
ask, yeah.
And I remember we had like a Halloween party because it was around September, October, in the hospital. And all these kids were like, some of them were in wheelchairs, some of them had bald heads. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like I don't want to be like these kids, and these kids are. And so I kind of disassociated from even having cancer and like thinking I had cancer like until I was in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one thing I hate to ask this question, it's morbid, but I mean, it's just the curiosity. And I'm sure some people are thinking, did any of those kids like die while you were there, or?
I don't know. I totally we were in our own world.
We were in our own world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably just a coping mechanism that we would, I would probably do as well. So I'm just wondering so now I'm looking at it from a parent. You know, when you become a parent one day, if you do like you'll now switch to the other side. Like, so they say you're cancer free. I'm sure, even though you're getting checkups every 6 months, does it feel like you're just like waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly? Like they say that, but like you don't know what's happening all the time in your body.
Yeah. So since I was so young and had the processing of like probably a 5-year-old, like because I was missing so much knowledge in my brain, I really developed so many phobias and so many fears of like death and the unpredictability of life. And that's how I rationalized my fear of dying, is putting it in different things. Like I was afraid of homeless people because I thought they were unpredictable, being in Los Angeles, like seeing them everywhere. And that had nothing to do with homeless people. Like it was just me scared of things that I was scared of eating food. So I developed like a eating disorder because I thought everything was poison to me. I thought somebody would come in, poison the food in a restaurant, and I wouldn't eat the food because I thought that. Fear of flying because I didn't want the plane to go down while I was in it. And like, I just was scared of everything because life is so unpredictable. Like what happened to me, I was a healthy boy and I got sick, and then everything became fine. And then all of that psychological fear turned into these phobias, and I had to go through like 10 years of therapy to unwind those and finally figure out, like that's why we had the phobias. Like it took a while to realize why I'm so scared of everything.
Right.
Because
which is amazing that you did go through the therapy, because some people they don't go through the therapy. And I think nowadays most parents would just obviously insist that their child does, because we know more about the benefits of therapy, and it's, you know what I mean? But like when I was growing up, if that had happened, they'd be like, and we move on. Although everybody would be fucked up. You know what I mean? They just wouldn't talk about it. Because I'm sure a lot of parents are like, we just don't talk about that now.
Yeah, like I bring up my parents, like they were not for therapy. Like they, like they, well, for me, yes, but like for them, like we don't want it. Like that's not for us. Like, and it's just, and like I tell them, I have therapies for everybody. And like if you're struggling through things, if you want to organize things in your brain, therapy is a good tool to have for anybody. Like I tell that to everybody I know.
So your parents never got therapy after that?
They did eventually. They my dad went into therapy, and then my mom went into therapy, because like having your kid near death, and there's other things that they could talk about. Like it's so helpful to have somebody there to talk to who is unbiased and not agreeing with you all the time, like just listening to you. And that's why I love therapy so much, is because you just need that person, because you can't hold it in. And I've done that a lot in my life, held in aggression, held in all these things that I was mad at the world for giving me cancer. And I took it up with like religion, I took it up with my parents, I took it up with everybody, and I was just an angry child for a while. And like I was like, why do we have to be religious? Like, why did God do this to me? Like, to test me. Like, why would you test an 8-year-old child? And like, I'm not very religious anymore because I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions about my life. But I was having these conversations at 8 years old, 9 years old. Like, I don't know any kid who is having the same conversations with their parents, talking about suicide and like talking about depression and anxiety at that age. And that's why I matured so quickly. It's because my mind went to so many dark places after that. And thank God for therapy, and thank God for having supportive parents, because if I didn't have that, it'd probably be somewhere that just not a great place.
How did your brother handle it?
So my brother, he's 4 years older than me. So he's one of the smartest people I know. And he, like, bless him, that he handled it very well. Even though he couldn't do anything, like, he's so smart that like he knew that science was going to help me. And and some people don't believe in that, but like my brother and my family are just a very science focused.
Right. Yes. But I mean, like, also though, and this happens a lot, not just with an illness, but with addiction or something else. Sometimes it's a child is amazing at a sport, and the parents give them so much attention that the other, their other child sort of like is in the background. Now, when you have a sick child, obviously they're going to need a lot of support and a lot of love. And it's not that they don't love your brother, clearly, but you're the one that needed a lot of it. And even though he's older, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, have you ever talked to him about that, about how he felt during that time? Like, I'm sure your parents probably tried to do the best they could, and they might have done an amazing job, but there still is going to be, like, they have to be there with you all the time. You're getting, again, it's for good things and bad things,
Yeah.
So how did your brother handle that?
Yeah, he was frustrated, as any sibling would be. Like, we talked about being protective of your younger siblings, and it's just the two of us. So he is super protective over me, and like has been, and he still is.
Right.
And he just handled it very well because my parents were so focused on me and not him. He might have had some things, and when he's a teenager and he's rebellious and stuff like that, but who doesn't? Like, everyone does. And he took it like a champ, and like he worked off of that. And then he actually became a doctor, a pediatric cardiologist.
Amazing.
Because the inspiration of having doctors take care of me, and him being helpless, he's like, I'm never going to want to feel helpless again.
Right.
And I want to do something about it. And he became a doctor, and he went to medical school and everything, and did all of that. And I'm so proud of him today for the man he is, and he is amazing in every way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He's the golden child, guys. Now
He
the
is the
parents are
golden
like, you know what,
child.
this is the guy.
Yeah.
This is it. You're healed, you're fine, and you're a producer. But our son's a doctor. Your parents get to say that.
Yes, the son's a doctor, the producing doctor combination. That's what all parents want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? Exactly. Is that he was always the golden child, though, like all the time. Like, he would straight A's, like he was top 10 in his high school.
Right.
Like, it was just always, I felt like in his shadow.
Right.
But he never felt like that. He was like, he wanted to lead me to better things.
I think because he's 4 years older, that's the right amount, I think, of age difference. You know what I mean? Or maybe even a little older, but like my brother and I were 3.5 years different, and it was a little hard. It was harder on my brother just because I think he, was so used to the attention from my mom and dad, and then I came along and I got a lot of attention because I was like the first girl of the family, and look at me, I'm stunning. So clearly I was getting all the attention. No, it's hard. It's hard for siblings in general when a new, child comes into the family for them to just be like, oh, you know what I mean? And now but again, I think because he was a little bit older, like had this had happened, it's interesting because I'm thinking about it like how you struggled with a lot of stuff, especially like the trauma of being in, the children's hospital, all of that. Let's say they had found it at 3 or 3.5. You probably would have your body would remember some of the trauma and stuff like that, but I think you would have probably been a little bit more stable growing up, because you wouldn't have had a lot of memories of it. You know what I mean?
No.
Now your brother, on the other hand, who would have been younger and not as mature as he was when this happened, probably would have taken the brunt of it.
Affected him
would
a
affected
lot
him
more.
A lot more.
Especially at that stage of life when you're still dependent mostly on your parents.
Yes.
And like, he was in middle school at the time when I had my cancer, and he had a bunch of new friends, and he was 12 years old, and he was living life in sixth grade, seventh grade. And it just really didn't affect him as badly as it would.
As if he was like 9 or 8 or 9, which is what you were. So then you eventually joined a lot of like cancer support groups.
Yeah, so it actually took me a long time to
say a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted to disassociate myself from having cancer.
Right.
Because I just couldn't think of myself as a cancer patient or a cancer survivor.
Right.
And not until I was in college, I'm like, yeah, I can actually tell people about the story and tell people that I survived cancer, because why not?
Of course, yeah.
My whole upbringing in school, I was so afraid to tell people I had cancer because I didn't want people to look at me differently. And I would hide my scar. I still have a bald spot in my scar, and I would just brush my hair over it and be like, I'm one of you guys. Like, I never had any cancer. Even though I have all these learning disabilities that stem from that.
Isn't it crazy that you'd rather people just think you have learning disabilities because that's so trendy compared to like being a cancer survivor? You're like, no, I'm just like sort of dumb. Yeah. And everyone's like, that's cool. We're kind of dumb too.
Yeah. It's like everyone has ADHD and ADD now.
Oh my God, everyone. I know. You're like, yeah, I've got to have it. You know what I mean? Yours just started from cancer, but they're just like, oh, that's
most
cool.
of my friends had ADHD, so it was pretty common, but I had like way more things than that.
Did that get better though after the surgery? So like, what did your like behavior get better? Like you know what I mean? That
behavior, yes, because I was so timid after surgery. Like, I was kind of crazy before that, and I would do whatever I want because the tumor in my brain was still like affecting my behavior a lot. And after that, I became so timid and so scared and so anxious, so depressed, and like I would just be so quiet all the time after that.
I feel like, and again, as a parent, you know, you see your child go through different stages, and every stage you lose the version of who they were before. So my daughter is 3.5, almost 4 actually. And I look at pictures of her when she was 18 months, when she was 2 years, when she was 10 months old, all of those things. And I'm like, oh, that's not my child. That's like, that version of my child is gone forever. The version of who she is now will be gone next month, most likely. Yeah. And it is kind of sad, but then you're looking at your child. I can only imagine that your parents probably mourned a little bit the version of you before cancer, which, you know, maybe was like obviously a little bit more stressful, rambunctious, but still that like they loved you so much and that version of you was no longer. Yeah. And here's a new version that comes with, you know, new challenges. And of course, like the depression, did you talk about suicide at 8?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I talked about suicide probably for couple years after that, and
I can't even imagine.
And like at 8 years old, like you don't want your child talking about suicide, and it was just
how
the
did you
struggle.
even like really know? I'm sorry, but like if this sounds like ignorant, but like how does an 8-year-old even know about suicide? I mean, nowadays I get it because of TikTok, everything. But like, how would you even know about that?
I don't even think I did. I think I just wanted to end my life.
You just were like, I don't want to be here anymore.
I don't want to be here anymore. Like it's so hard for me to exist with these. Like I couldn't learn anything without trying so hard. Everything.
Even after?
Yeah, even after. Like everything was just so hard for me because of my memory. Like my memory is shot. Everything had to go into my long-term memory. That means I have to study 4 hours longer than the next kid.
Right.
And my parents would be like, you have to study. You have to have tutors. You have to have therapy. And I was like, I just want to play with my friends. I just want to watch TV. I want to play with toys. I didn't want to do that. And most of my afternoons and evenings coming back from school, I would have tutoring for like 4 hours. And my mom was a teacher, so she would try to help me. And that would be even worse because
it's the worst.
Your parents trying to teach you is
don't
just
teach
so
your
bad.
kids. So my dad is an engineer and he's like a math whiz, like an idiot savant. Like it's unreal how good my dad is at math. And I'm pretty good at math. I'm not like my dad, but I remember him trying to help me, and I was like, just go away from me. Like I would rather fail the test than have you help me because they get frustrated. They get frustrated. They talk to you differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they talk to you like you're their child. Like you want somebody on your level, and like you want
100%.
somebody to like look up to, and like you already have your parents, and you want a tutor to come in and like have an outside source.
Of course.
But yeah, like my mom's a teacher, my dad's an engineer, my brother turned out to be a doctor. Like they're all in the math and science kind of fields, and I was just thinking, I'm like, I can't learn math, I can't learn science. Like English language was always just so hard for me too. Like I felt like I was good at nothing. Like I liked history and that was it. I really struggled having any sort of normal life at home too, and then at school was even worse because I saw these kids thriving. And I felt like I was just going backwards, and it was a constant cycle of like, that's why I contemplated suicide. And like I just felt like I had no other option. And I remember even close to like my bar mitzvah, I was struggling with religion. I was like, why do I even have to have a bar mitzvah? Like I don't even believe in God. And like that's when a lot of things came out where it's like, I just don't feel like living anymore. And like, I don't feel like carrying on this burden of trying so hard all the time. And my parents, bless them for like trying to they kept me going, and they kept pushing me towards things and pushed me to go to college and pushed me to get into advanced classes.
Did it get easier when you got older?
I just learned to handle it better.
Right.
I had educational therapy that helped a lot to remember things and help with my cognitive disability. And I just tried harder and harder and different methods, and some methods stuck. Like it just repetition in my brain, just saying it over and over and over again. Like if I want to remember a phone number, I have to say it over and over and over again to remember it.
Right. And now we don't have to remember anyone's number.
Yeah.
So thank God for that.
Thank God. Because back then I would have to call my mom on somebody else's telephone, and I'm like, what's their number? And I have no idea.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So like, what do you think would have made a difference? And this is mainly for parents out there that have kids that are not per se cancer survivors, but have issues with learning disabilities. And, you know, there are parents that are like, you're not trying hard enough, or, you know, obviously now there are a lot more, you know, labels for things that we didn't know before, but still there are a lot of parents out there that are just like, you're not doing the work, you're lazy, you're like, what do you think? What do you think would have been? What do you think would have helped you back then, and or would help people now that have kids that are struggling?
I think now that the education system was so, I feel like, different when I was, it was the early 2000s. We're still in like the George Bush era of no kid left behind kind of thing. And I was just so struggling that they were just giving me Scantron tests all the time, like all these tests, all these standardized tests that like, it's just memory. Like it's literally, you just have to remember it and then apply it, and then you'll never use that again.
Right.
And using like education that's based in like real life, like doing math for your taxes or doing all that kind of stuff. Like I remember in high school, we wrote checks like in our home ec class, and that stuck with me. I still remember how to write checks, like those things that apply to your real life, because I would have to remember these things I'd never have to use ever. Yeah. And people like fail me on a test because I have to remember what dynasty in China, for the Great Wall of China, like that doesn't make any sense if I didn't want to learn it or continue it.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. But like nowadays, I think they're using more methods like that. Like if you're gonna go outside, you look for these things, and if you're gonna do, if you're gonna go on a field trip or you're gonna be with your parents, have your parents help you out around the school, like around your house, and it's so much different. And I wish I knew more about the education system.
Right.
And my mom's a teacher, but she's on her way out. So all these new teachers are coming in with new methods, which I think, and all these STEM schools are coming out too, that they focus on math and science more, and then there's other schools that focus on literature, and there's other schools that focus on performing arts.
Right.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do anyway, so I don't know if that would help, but maybe I was interested in history, so maybe something in that.
Could have been something. And it's interesting that you would pick history when a lot of kids find that incredibly boring. But I'm sure there was something about the story element, like that's similar to like writing a check. So you can hear a story about someone who did something through history, and that sort of sticks with you instead of like do this division, the long division, or geometry that everyone's like, what? Algebra. People are still like, I don't understand you. But like when you hear something that's like, and then they did this and they met this person along the way, that I could see that staying with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and definitely like looking at kids and seeing what they're interested in, and then pushing that more instead of pushing them something that's like they have no interest in all. Because I was interested in building things. I was interested in building Legos all the time, or Lincoln Logs, or blocks. And my parents pushed me more down like a creative path, and drawing and doing film and TV.
That's great.
And that's where I ended up. Like I ended up pursuing this because my parents were like, they saw that creative side in me, and they're like, he really likes this, and he really likes building things, and watching it all come together. Because I would just build things and then look at it, and I'm like, I'm proud of myself for building this. And that's what I do now. Like I'm proud of like all the things that I put together and make, and I can look at it and admire it. And that's how I got into film.
But that's taking history, a story element of it, and constructing something and building it from the concept to screen.
All these interests that I had, history and the creative process, and I mix it into one. And that's why I went to school for documentary work, which ties everything pretty much together.
Absolutely.
And it took me a while to learn that. Like I took film classes in high school, and people were like, oh, he's okay at like this stuff. Like you should pursue this. And I'm like, I don't know. I was thinking about becoming like a history teacher or like doing that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's very interesting how things have changed and haven't changed. I'm sure there are a lot of teachers out there that are still very in the old school way of teaching. And I remember, I'm really grateful that my parents were incredibly supportive with both my brother and I are in the arts. My brother is a drummer. He's been a musician his entire life. That's all he ever wanted to do, no matter what. And I was very athletic, but I also was, but even when I was very, very athletic, when I was really young, I was a gymnast. I had my own coach. I was already competing at a very young age, but I was also in gymnastics 6 days a week. And I remember telling my parents that I didn't want to do it anymore. Most parents would be like, no, you're going to go to the Olympics. This is the way it's going to go. So either people push too hard into one way, like in one direction, or they don't push at all. You know what I mean? They're just like, okay, you'll learn everything and whatever. And maybe, some parents are like, I don't care that you're good creatively. You have to know these things over here. Where it's like my parents were fine with me going in that direction and my brother going in that direction, which I'm incredibly grateful. When I said I didn't want to do gymnastics anymore, they were like, okay, on to the next, which is great. I think you're right. A lot of parents, and especially if they have a child that is sick and now is healthy again, they're like, you gotta play catch. Like, you know what I mean? Like either they're, oh my God, whatever you want, or the other way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it sounds like your parents, though, let you find your way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is great.
And we were fortunate that we had the means to let me find the way. Like a lot of people grow up and they can only afford so much. Like my parents they everything was so expensive, and they were struggling for a while to afford these things, but they were like, he is more important. If we're in debt, it's more important for him to find his way.
Of course.
And like just put the child first.
I think that's a really important message, not just the therapy message, but also with kids in general, as far as like letting them show you their interests and, you know what I mean, and letting them be them. Because the second if you try to like force them to do, anything, they're not gonna, it's just like the parent teaching you. I'm like, I look at my daughter who is, has problems with the poop. She's going to be so mortified one day when I show like all of her poop pictures in a loop.
Yeah.
And her
I would
bat
be
mitzvah.
too.
Yeah, you should be. When I had a bat mitzvah, I'm going to show like a reel of just her, all the
wait.
pictures. Oh, it's going to be great. Just be like, look how far you came. But it's her own speech therapy, which we've now actually put together a correlation between the withholding of the poop and her speech.
Wow.
She doesn't have the confidence in her speech. We really believe that this is going to help all of the other things. You know what I mean? It's just
It's a domino effect.
It really
it
is.
affects everything.
Instead of being so like, you're not getting it, or my kid is like, you know what I mean? I don't think anybody would say that nowadays, but my generation would be like, our kid is dumb, oh no.
Yeah. And that affects the child in so many ways.
So many ways.
It comes back to them later in
Oh
life.
my God.
Because I've had teachers tell me that you're not smart enough. Like, you
That's
shouldn't be in my
horrible.
class. And they've told my mom that. They told me that. And I was like, yeah, I shouldn't be in these classes. And it made me feel terrible inside. And like, for an adult to tell a child that like, you shouldn't be in this class,
Terrible.
instead of helping them succeed, like, it affects them in the long run. And like, it makes them think that they're inadequate.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
That
just-
person should be fired.
Yeah.
Do you remember
I think
like
they were.
okay, good. In middle school, I remember we did the, let's cut a frog open and see where its pregnant belly is. I don't even know. It's terrible. We were just dissecting shit. Now they do it with like a jelly mold. Anyway, we had like fermented like baby pigs. It was
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, it was just jar. Anyway, I was like, for one brief moment, as most kids do, especially little girls, I was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. Like, I'm going to totally do that. I can fix all the animals, which, by the way, I have a lot of stray animals in my backyard. So I kind of became like a veterinarian. Anyway, but I remember being so excited. Here's a memory that imprinted in my brain in middle school. It's like you have great moments and really terrible moments. And I went up to my teacher after class, and I think I was like preparing to be like, I want to be a veterinarian. What is the best college? Even though I was in middle school, because I'm going to do it. And and I don't remember the teacher. I think I was wearing a pink outfit, actually. But I remember specifically saying that, what is the best college I should be thinking about? So maybe I was actually a freshman in high school, although my middle school went 7th, 8th, and 9th. No, 7th and 8th. Sorry, it's just 7th and 8th. So it might have been 9th. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I said that to him, expecting them to be like, here are the schools. Keep at it. This is a great goal. And what they said to me, they brought up Cornell. And I was like, Cornell?
Yeah.
Yes. I was excited.
Great
And
school.
They literally, whoever this person was, I can't remember who it was, said, you're not smart enough to go to that school, though. Based on your grades and your performance in my class, you're an average
Middle
student.
school or like really
Even
young.
freshman in high school,
like,
I was
it's still
definitely
early.
yes.
Yeah.
It's still very early for me to be, instead of being like, that's a great goal. Just so you know, maybe we should focus a little bit more on getting some of your grades up, or you need a lot of grades. So let me help you. We can whatever. Yeah. They straight up just said, I wouldn't even think about Cornell, though, because you don't have the grades to get in. You're an average student, which is fine, but you're not going to get into a school like that. So if that's something you want to do, you're going to have to consider another school.
Yeah.
You know what I did? I was like, well, I'm not going to be a veterinarian. And I was very devastated.
Yeah.
And now I'm a stand-up
destroys your
comic, so fuck that
self-confidence,
person.
yeah. It does. And then you became a stand-up comic.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean... It was like, you never say that to a child.
No, never.
And back then, they were just like, that's what we do. We just like shoot down dreams. You know what I mean?
You should never destroy a child's self-worth.
No. Wait, yeah.
Always encourage them
life
to do
will
better.
do that.
Yeah, life naturally
own, yes.
will do that, and they'll figure out their way on the way there. But like, as a figure of power in your life, like a teacher or a parent,
yes,
you should never destroy your child's or the kid's self-confidence, because that will really hurt them.
Oh my God. Somebody, like, yes, especially a parent or a teacher. Like, those are the two people in their life that they spend the most amount of time with. Obviously, their teachers change, but they look to their teachers for the guidance and help, and they want to impress them and make them proud the same way they want to make their parents proud. Sometimes even more so, they want to impress that teacher.
Yeah.
And for either one of those authority figures to shoot down a child's dreams, hopes, aspirations, any of those things is devastating. I don't think people realize. I mean, I think I'm now all the generations, but specifically my generation is like, oh, whatever you say, like, you're scarring your child. They'll be in therapy. And I'm like, I think when I I know I did. When I first, became a mom, everything I did with Mackenzie, even when she was a baby, I was like, this is going to scar her. I don't want to say the wrong thing to her. And it's like, I don't think that anymore. You know what I mean?
There's no such thing as a perfect parent.
No.
And there's always going to be ways, like there's always new learning ways to have a child, and there's always going to be things that are like, oh, that accidentally traumatized the kid, and then they're going to need therapy later in their life. And it's the same for everybody. Like little things that happen in their childhood, it's not necessarily anybody's fault,
right?
But it's just natural in life. Like they used to live like 40 years back then, and like
so they were like, we're dead.
We're dead anyway.
We're dead anyway.
Like,
so you can hate us as much as you want.
A lot of the problems we have now are so like superficial and stuff, but it doesn't mean that it's less worth, and you can't think about it like that.
It's absolutely. And you're in obviously a Gen Z generation, and your generation has its own set of issues. My daughter's in Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they're going to be
crazy.
Like. It's crazy. It's just crazy. She's growing up with social media. I mean, you basically grew up with social media.
Yeah. I was like the first test subjects for social media.
Right.
I was born in 2000, so literally a digital age for me. And Facebook, Instagram, all those things came out when I was like in middle school. In elementary school. So I had a Facebook, I think at 9 years old, 10 years old. Like we created Facebooks.
When you were going through cancer though, when you came out of cancer, you had that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we had that. I had a laptop. Like somebody gave me a laptop to be in the hospital, so I had something to do.
Wow.
So I was always on the computer, always on something digital. My dad's Palm Pilot or his, Palm Pilots were awesome. But yeah, literally from day one, I was always stuck in front of something digital.
So do you think you would have, though? I mean, kids definitely post stories about having cancer now. You know what I mean?
Which is crazy to me to think of that. Like I think it's more accepting now to have something that you're different because it's more accepting to be different now. And some
I'm assuming they also feel less alone. You know what I mean?
And that was the thing. I felt so alone. I felt always alone, even though if I had a couple friends and like they never knew what I was going through in my mind. And I always felt so alone. Now there's communities and there's groups, and I'm part of this group now called CSCLA, which is Cancer Support Community of Los Angeles.
We'll have this listed.
Yes, and they're an amazing organization. It's free to sign up if you had cancer, and if you know somebody going through cancer, you can sign up for groups and talk about it, and they have resources. I'm part of the advisory board for that organization, and they're great. They're always willing to help, and there's definitely organizations across the country that are similar to that, and I think they're part of the same umbrella. But always look up online. That's why having internet so good now is you can look up all these groups, Facebook groups, cancer support groups, any support groups that are great. And
if you look up one, don't worry, the algorithm has noted that, and you will get a lot of reminders to join
all the time now, like I do.
Yeah, all of them. But I'm sure when you join your first one, because a lot of people don't join groups because they're like, well, I don't want to hear everybody else's sad story. Like, I'm trying to move on with my life. But in reality, I would think it would feel good to have a group of people that have gone through similar things. And I'm sure you probably met some people that had the exact same type of cancer as you. Correct?
Yeah, and I helped found like the pediatric survivors group in that space. And so I started talking to people who actually survived cancer when they were a child, which it was a lot of older people, and having cancer when you're a child and having cancer versus having cancer when you're an adult is way different, because when you're an adult, you have everything figured out, mostly, and when you're a child, you're still like
the concept of death does not even
and it happens, and then you can talk to somebody who had cancer as a child and say, like, you had the same feelings I did. That makes me feel
That's amazing.
good. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. We'll have everything listed, but that is amazing. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And
thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah. I thank you for being here.
Yeah.
My name is Jodi Miller, and you guys have been listening to Don't Call Me Ma'am. Guys, don't call me ma'am.
Don't call it ma'am.